All right, anatomy students, this is part 3 of our blood lecture, and we're going to finish off talking about leukocytes, or WBCs, which stands for white blood cells. So white blood cells are mainly going to protect us from infections and diseases, and in order to do this, they need to produce some different chemicals. And in order to produce those chemicals, that means that they need to perform protein synthesis. So they're different from red blood cells because they have to retain their organelles in order to perform their functions. So, if they're doing protein synthesis, then they need a nucleus with DNA, they need ribosomes, they need endoplasmic reticulum. So, they need all of these things in order to do their job, to fill those granules with various different chemicals in order to protect us from infection. So in your note sheet, you guys have, I'm just going to move this over. You guys have a copy of this table. It's blank, but that's just to try and keep you guys focused. So here across the top, we have neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, and lymphocytes, and we're just going to describe a couple of characteristics about each of them. So anyway, neutrophils are what we're going to start with. You'll notice that the nucleus is kind of weirdly shaped, right? It's got about 3 lobes that are connected with these skinny little strands of genetic material. They could be 3 lobes or they could be 5 lobes. Eosinophils have 2 lobes usually. Your book describes them as the nucleus of an eosinophil is looking like a pair of earmuffs, which I thought was kind of cute. And basophils have a nucleus, but it's often obscured by the great number of granules that it has in its cytoplasm. And because all of these have granules, these are the granulocytes. The last two, you can't see the granules with different stains that are used to create the slide. So these are called the agranulocytes. Monocytes are characterized by a large U-shaped or kidney-shaped nucleus. And lymphocytes, I've always thought that they looked like a fisheye. But they have this large round nucleus in the center. It's kind of flat on one side, not quite like indented like this U-shaped nucleus of the monocyte. But then like all around on the outside just have this very thin halo of cytoplasm there. Because most of the space is being taken up by this large nucleus that it's got. And both of these are going to stain purple. The cytoplasm then of the neutrophils looks like it's filled up with these red granules, whereas eosinophils are kind of like a coral color, like pinky orange in color. The basophils have lots of dark spots. And then the monocytes are very smooth looking, homogeneous cytoplasm. And then the lymphocytes have that little like ring of cytoplasm close to the outside of the cell. Okay, moving on. Our neutrophils have granules that have antibacterial chemicals in them, whereas eosinophils are antiparasitic. So if you ever have a tapeworm, hopefully your eosinophil numbers will increase so that we can get rid of that tapeworm for you. And then the basophils have granules that are filled with histamine and heparin. And the whole point of histamine and heparin is to increase the amount of blood and to increase the speed at which blood arrives at the site of infection. Because remember, blood is going to carry with it all of the different cells that are required in order to fight off an infection. Now, you may have heard of histamine before, like many of you, especially at this time of year, could be taking an antihistamine like Claritin because, it's spring outside, things are flowering, we've got pollen and mold and all kinds of things that are in the air. And so the antihistamine is going to block the action of histamine, thereby reducing the watery eyes, the runny nose, stuffy head, things like that. But histamine also has a vasodilation effect. So it's going to take the lumen of the blood vessels from being very skinny, and boom, it's going to open it so that it's very large. And in so doing, you're going to decrease the resistance that blood has to get from one place to another. So you're going to increase the speed at which the blood is flowing. Heparin is an anticoagulant. It's a blood thinner. It's going to prevent the formation of blood clots, again, thereby allowing for the unobstructed travel of white blood cells to areas of infection. And so, yep, I just talked about all of that with basophils, but neutrophils are going to destroy bacteria, whereas the eosinophils are going to destroy parasites. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the functions of these different leukocytes. Neutrophils are like the first responders of the immune system. They are, in pus, they are the most abundant of the white blood cells that you have in an infected area. They phagocytize bacteria, which means that they surround them, engulf them, and kill them. And they also produce antibacterial chemicals. So, in addition to coming in contact with the bacteria, they're also going to send out chemicals out into the interstitial fluid or the blood or wherever they are. And those chemicals are going to bind to and lyse or kill the bacteria that are there. Eosinophils are going to phagocytize antibody-antigen complexes. One thing that antibodies do, which is very similar to the transfusion reaction that we were just talking about, is that if there are a lot of bacteria, for instance, in an area, then the antibodies will kind of like clump them all together and form like a big clump. And then that big clump is what's going to signal eosinophils to come to that area and to surround and engulf and kill all of those complexes, antibody-antigen complexes. They are also going to secrete inflammatory chemicals, so they're pro-inflammation, and they are also going to weaken parasites. Basophils, as I mentioned, their function is to increase blood flow to tissue, prevent clots as well, and both of these things are going to increase the motility or the movement of white blood cells. Now, monocytes are interesting because they become macrophages in tissues. Monocytes are circulating in the blood, but if they are called to an infected area, you see damaged cells are going to release chemicals that attract monocytes to the area. So if they are attracted to a site, they're going to leave the blood vessels and they're going to go to the site of inflammation. There they become macrophages, which means that they're going to surround, engulf, and destroy various antigens that are found there. But then they do something else that's actually really cool, and it's something called antigen presentation. So they don't always just like kill off whatever it is that they've eaten. They're going to take a small portion of that antigen and whoop, they're going to kind of like make like a little antenna on the surface of their cell membrane. And they're going to present this piece of antigen to a plasma cell or to a T cell. And then that is going to start what's called the adaptive immune response or the specific immune response. It's a highly specific response that is tailored to beating the antigen that was taken in and displayed by the phagocyte or by the macrophage. So macrophages will take in the antigen and then say, hey, look what I've got. They put up a red flag, so to speak, and then bring it to the cells that facilitate this very specific immune response, which we're going to talk more about next week. But yeah, antigen presentation is a really big, important function that monocytes have. There are other cells that do perform antigen presentation, some other cells that are called dendritic cells, but also some lymphocytes are going to do that as well. But mostly you've heard of lymphocytes called T cells and B cells. Yeah, it's the B cells that are going to make the antibodies, and it's T cells that are going to perform they're going to kill off infected self cells that are found in the body. Some of these are even going to destroy cancer cells. And again, we're going to talk more about these cells next week. All right, so this is kind of a nice to know thing, but white blood cells have the same origin as red blood cells, so they're all going to start off with as hematopoietic stem cells. This is happening in the bone marrow, and then from there, the hematopoietic stem cells are going to form what's called colonies. The lymphoid colony is kind of separate and different from the myeloid colony. And so the lymphocytes are going to differentiate and mature kind of on their own path, whereas the red blood cells, the monocytes and the neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils, they're all going to follow similar paths because they're all arising from the same colony forming units. And then this is another nice to know thing. Mature white blood cells are going to use something called colony stimulating factor. I know CSF kind of makes you think of cerebral spinal fluid, but no, not here, not when we're talking about our blood cells. When we're talking about our blood cells, we are actually talking about colony stimulating factor. So what I'm talking about is, if I can get back to my slide here, colony stimulating factor is stimulating these colonies to differentiate into different kinds of blood cells. But when we get infected by an antigen, that's going to stimulate mature macrophages and lymphocytes to secrete this colony stimulating factor, which is very specific for the type of white blood cell needed. So if this is infection by a bacteria, then the type of cell that is going to be synthesized more and faster would be the neutrophil. If this antigen is a parasite, then it's the eosinophils that we're going to need. And so the colony forming units then will be stimulated to synthesize quickly whatever type of white blood cell we need in order to beat that infection. And so remember that the Phil family, the eosinophils, the basophils, the neutrophils, those are all granulocytes, and then the monocytes and the lymphocytes are the agranulocytes. All right, and then finally on that document that I have attached to our agenda, I've got that page that has a couple of different videos on there. This video is there too. Again, these videos are not very long, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, so I think that they're worth viewing. And that is all that I have for you today. So thanks for watching all 3 parts of the blood lecture. And the next time we meet, we will talk about platelets and hemostasis, the control of bleeding or blood clot formation. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Bye, everybody.